Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into the world of dinosaurs, specifically looking at a pretty recent discovery, Ampelognathus cohini.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Our goal is to really get into what this creature was, where and when it lived back in the late Cretaceous, and crucially, where it fits, or where we think it fits now, in the big dinosaur family tree.
Which is always evolving, that understanding.
Exactly. So our main source here is the scientific abstract summarized on its Wikipedia page. So let's dive in. Ampelognathus cohini. Even the name sounds like it has a story.
It absolutely does. And what's really cool about finds like this, I think, isn't just, adding another dinosaur name to the list.
Right.
It's how sometimes just one fossil, like in this case, is basically a jawbone fragment.
Just the jawbone, wow.
Yeah, it's the partial jawbone, can actually make us rethink things about dinosaur evolution, about the whole ecosystem back then.
Okay, so let's start right there. The discovery. How did Ampelognathus actually come to light? Where was this texan found?
Well, the key piece, the sort of defining specimen, is what scientists call the holotype. Its catalog number is DMNH 2021 Re502.
Okay.
And what it is a nearly complete left dentary. So think the main bone in the lower left part of the jaw.
Got it.
This was found in the Louisville Formation, which itself is part of a bigger rock unit called the Woodbine Group. And the specific spot, the emergency spillway of Grapevine Lake over in Tarrant County, Texas.
Ah, so Grapevine Lake. That sounds familiar already, given the name we'll get to. So Texas giving up secrets from, what, millions of years ago?
That's right. We're talking the Cenomanian age. That puts it squarely in the late Cretaceous period.
And time frame-wise, Cenomanian is roughly?
Roughly somewhere between 94 and 100 million years ago, give or take.
Wow.
And here's a really neat little detail. This jawbone, it was found only about 100 meters, so pretty close,
Very close.
to where the holotype specimen of Fleximornis was found.
Fleximornis, that rings a bell. That was an early bird, wasn't it?
Exactly, an Enantiornithian bird. So, finding them so close together really makes you wonder about that specific spot.
Yeah, like was it a fossil jackpot area? Or just good preservation conditions for both a small dinosaur and a bird?
It does spark questions about the environment they shared, for sure.
So who are the scientists who actually looked at this jawbone and said, hey, this is something new?
The formal description, naming it as a new genus and species, was published in 2023. The team was Tchaikovsky, Contreras, and Noto.
Tchaikovsky, Contreras, and Noto.
Okay, they're the ones who did the detailed study and concluded it was, well, a previously unknown type of dinosaur.
And the name they picked, Ampelognathus cohini. Let's break that down. It's quite specific.
It really is. So, the first part, the genus name, Ampelognathus, is built from Greek. Ampelos means grapevine.
Ah, Grapevine Lake.
Exactly, directly referencing the location. And gnathos just means jaw.
So grapevine jaw makes sense.
Yep, grapevine jaw. And the second part, the species name, cohini, that honors Murray Cohen, he was the person who actually discovered the holotype specimen.
Oh, that's great. Acknowledging the discoverer.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, a fitting tribute to the person who literally picked it up out of the ground.
It really is. Okay, so we've got the when, the where, the who discovered it, and the name. Now, the big question, where does it fit? The classification part.
Right, the taxonomy. So starting broad, it's in the domain Eukaryotic, kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata. Then we get to clade Dinosauria.
The main dinosaur group.
Yep. Within dinosaurs, it's an ornithischian. That's one of the two major branches, the bird-hipped dinosaurs, although birds actually came from the other branch, the Saurischia. Kind of ironic.
Always is. Okay, Ornithischia. Then where?
That within Ornithischia is placed in the clade Ornithopoda. This is a really diverse group, mostly two-legged herbivores, things like duck-billed dinosaurs way down the line, but also lots of smaller forms earlier on. Now, the abstract we're referencing puts it within the clade Iguanodontia, and then even more specifically, but with a little question mark, suggesting some uncertainty
Tentative placement.
within the clade Rhabdodontomorpha. So that question mark is important. It signals ongoing debate or early assessment.
Definitely tells us the science is still unfolding. So what did Tchaikovsky and his colleagues initially think back in 2023? Where did their first analysis put Ampelognathus?
Their phylogenetic analysis, that's the study of evolutionary relationships, it recovered Ampelognathus as what they called a basal member of Ornithopoda.
Basal meaning early branching. Kind of primitive for that group.
Pretty much, yeah. It branched off relatively early compared to other known ornithopods, and specifically they found it was the sister taxon to the group that includes both Thescelosaurus and the Iguanodontia.
Sister taxon meaning its closest relative, like you said, like siblings on the family tree diagram.
Exactly. So under that first interpretation, Ampelognathus was sort of on the path toward the Iguanodontians, closer to them and Thescelosaurus than it was to other groups like the Hypsilophodonts.
Right, and you always see Hypsilophodon in quotes now. Why is that?
Well, because Hypsilophodontidae isn't really seen as a natural group anymore. It was kind of a historical dumping ground for various small, two-legged ornithopods that didn't clearly fit elsewhere. They probably aren't all that closely related to each other.
Ah, okay. So, initial idea. Basal ornithopod, sister to the Thescelosaurus, plus Iguanodontia branch.
Correct. An early offshoot heading towards those bigger, more derived Iguanodontians.
Got it. But science doesn't sleep, right? So there were other studies that looked at this.
That's right. Fast forward just a bit to 2024. Fonseca and colleagues published a big study looking at early ornithischian relationships.
Okay.
Now, their main analysis was already done before Ampelognathus was officially published, so they couldn't include its data directly in their computer analysis.
Ah, timing issue.
Yeah, just bad timing. But they did read the Ampelognathus description and commented on it, based on the features Tchaikovsky's team described.
What did Fonseca's team suggest?
They noted several traits that made them think Ampelognathus might actually belong to a different group, the Rhabdodontomorpha.
Rhabdodontomorpha. Now that's a group more associated with Europe, isn't it? During the late Cretaceous.
Predominantly, yes. That's where most of them are found. So finding one potentially in Texas is quite interesting from a biogeography perspective.
Definitely. And where within Rhabdodontomorpha did they think it might fit?
They suggested it would likely be a pretty basal member of that group too, so it would have branched off earlier than the other main subgroups within Rhabdodontomorpha, like the Tenontosauridae. Tenontosaurus is the famous one there, or the Rhabdodontoidea, which includes Rhabdodon itself.
Okay, so this is a different picture. Instead of being a general basal ornithopod leaning towards iguanodontians, maybe it's an early member of this more specific, mostly European group. That's quite a shift.
It is a significant potential shift, yeah. It changes how we think about its evolutionary connections and maybe even how these dinosaurs moved around the world.
And did this idea get any follow-up?
It did.
Yeah.
In 2025, Czepieski and Madzia took Fonseca's data set and actually plugged the Ampelognathus data into it based on the 2023 description.
Ah, so they tested Fonseca's hypothesis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And their analysis supported it. They found Ampelognathus grouping as a basal rhabdodontomorph, just as Fonseca and colleagues had tentatively proposed.
Wow. Okay, so now we have these two competing ideas, basically. Two different branches it could sit on. It's hard to visualize sometimes just hearing the names. Can you maybe describe what those two family trees, those cladograms would look like?
Sure, let's try. Imagine the first scenario, Tchaikovsky's 2023 idea. You have the main line of ornithopod evolution. Fairly early on, a branch splits off. That's Ampelognathus.
Okay.
The main line continues, and then it splits again, leading eventually to Thescelosaurus, and then the big group, Iguanodontia. So Ampelognathus is sort of an early cousin to that whole later group.
Got it. An early side branch. Now, what about the second scenario? The Fonseca, Czepieski, and Madzia idea. Basal rhabdodontomorph.
Right. In that picture, you follow the main ornithopod line again. Then a specific branch splits off, and that whole branch is the Rhabdodontomorpha.
Okay.
And Ampelognathus is one of the very first twigs coming off that Rhabdodontomorpha branch, before you get to the other known Rhabdodontomorph families, like Tenontosauridae and Rhabdodontoidea, further up that branch.
So still an early split, but this time within a more specific group, the Rhabdodontomorpha.
Precisely. So it's about whether it's an early cousin to Iguanodontians or an early member of the Rhabdodontomorph lineage.
It's fascinating how just looking closely at the details of a jawbone can lead to these different interpretations and ongoing scientific discussion. What initially looked maybe like a generic small ornithopod gets placed in these quite different contexts.
It really highlights the process, doesn't it? We find something, we analyze it with current methods, propose a hypothesis, then someone else finds more data or uses a different analysis and refines or challenges that hypothesis. It's how science moves forward.
Absolutely. So, stepping back a bit, beyond the classification puzzle, why is finding Ampelognathus important in the bigger picture? What does it add to our understanding of Texas or the late Cretaceous in general?
Well, like the original paper pointed out, it's actually the first small-bodied ornithopod dinosaur officially named and described from that specific rock unit, the Louisville Formation.
First small one. Interesting.
Yeah. We knew there were big dinosaurs there, but finding the smaller components of the ecosystem is really crucial for understanding the whole picture. The Louisville Formation is giving us this great window into coastal Texas about, 95 million years ago. Adding Ampelognathus makes that picture richer, especially with its potentially unusual evolutionary ties.
Right, it adds another piece to the biodiversity puzzle of North America back then. And just to be clear on terms we've used, temporal range is just the time it lived, late Cretaceous here.
Correct. Cenomanian age within the late Cretaceous.
And holotype is that specific jawbone, DMNH 2021 voice 502, the name bearer for the species.
Exactly, the reference specimen.
Mm.
And terms like basal and sister taxon are just tools we use in phylogenetics, the study of evolutionary family trees, to describe relationships, how early a group branched off, or who its closest relative is.
Helps map out the history of life.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Summing up our deep dive on Ampelognathus cohini, the grapevine jaw, what are the key takeaways?
Well, it's a newly named, small, likely herbivorous dinosaur from Texas, found very close to an early bird fossil, which is intriguing context. Its naming reflects both where it was found, Grapevine Lake, and the person who found it, Murray Cohen.
Right.
And its exact spot on the ornithopod family tree is still a bit of an active question. Initial thoughts put it as an early relative of iguanodontians.
But newer analyses perhaps lean towards it being an early member of the Rhabdodontomorpha group, which we mostly know from Europe.
Exactly. So it's a great case study in how science is constantly refining our picture of the past based on new finds and new analyses.
It really is. And that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Think about that single jawbone from Texas. How much can one fossil really tell us about the incredible diversity of life millions of years ago?
And how does this ongoing scientific process, finding fossils, studying them, debating their meaning, keep changing our understanding?
Right. Maybe future discoveries or even just new ways of looking at Ampelognathus will shift its position on that tree again. It reminds us that the story of life is one we're still piecing together, one discovery at a time. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.